Hi and welcome to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will bring you a wealth of interesting people with fascinating ideas across the tech industries, the creative industries, and also uplifting stories of courage and hope. We all go through prickly situations in life. I believe that through courage, creativity, and curiosity, you can find inspiration to nurture your zest. That thing that gets you up and out of bed every morning, the thing that lifts you up and lights up your day. So join me in the studio and let's see who we have in the hot seat today. Hello and welcome to Nurture Your Zest. Today we have a wonderful podcaster who I'm really happy to have alongside me and someone who's become a really great personal friend. So this is Dawn. Welcome Dawn, how are you?
I'm great. Really pleased to be here, Ashleigh.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure and it's so nice to have you in the studio. So we do some aligned work, which is great. But I mean, gosh, I'm really excited to chat to you today as a colleague or as someone that I look up to who's started a podcast and built a following, built a fan base. I think you've accomplished some things that a lot of podcasters really struggle with around audience and around content and material. So I'm really excited to chat to you about your show, but also what made you so interested in murder.
I know, murder. Well, it all started, my sister got me started with it, podcasting about 5 years ago now. I never even listened to a podcast, and she says, Dawn, we need to get you into listening to some true crime podcasts. So I started listening to that, and I don't know what it is about fascination about true crime. You know, there's so many of us out there that are fascinated, and it just is. There's no answer. It's just a fascination. But it was mainly American ones I was listening to, and very few and far between were their Scottish cases. And obviously being Scottish and knowing Scotland, I wanted to find out more about Scottish murders rather than just the famous ones we know about, you know, Bible John or Angus Sinclair, but just find out about other ones and share their story. So, thinking it would be really easy, I thought, I'm going to start my own podcast sharing Scottish murders, which is what I did.
And it's amazing because we've talked about this before. You not only share the story of the murders, but also the story of the victims and seeing them as real people and not just somebody who's lost their life. You know, it's like, who was that person? What were they interested in? What was their life about? But also what was the justice involved in that? So you started with your sister at one point and then you became a solo podcast. So how was that transition?
So I started doing it with Nicole because she's obviously interested in true crime as well. Maybe watching it more than actually recording the episodes with me. That wasn't really her passion, but she did it with me because I didn't have a lot of confidence. So we started off doing it, but it didn't sit right with me how we were doing it. I was telling a story which I'd spent a lot of time researching, I was passionate about, and then I would, tell the story to Nicole, and she was putting her own little spins on it, and there was a lot of laughing not about the murders, never about the murders, but she would just go off on little tangents and she'd be silly. And it just wasn't working for me. It didn't sit right for me. I wasn't happy doing it that way. So I said to her, would you mind stepping back? And she was quite happy because it wasn't really her thing, which is probably why she kept, doing different things, saying different things. And I was worried because a lot of people had commented and written in saying how funny the show was, how great Nicole was, how, so really interesting, I loved laughing along. So it was a big step to ask Nicole to step back and do it myself. And I was really nervous about what people would think, because then it just changed to just me telling the story, talking about the victim. I wanted to find out more about them. And you find out quite a lot that you can't find out a lot about the victim. It's really, really difficult. It's mainly just the crime, what happened, and a little bits, but I wanted to know them. It was important to me to share about them. Yeah, it was a big decision to make to just ask Nicole to step back and for me to do it by myself. And there were a few people that didn't like it, and I think I lost a few listeners, but I think I gained a lot more because the respect was always there, but it sat better with me being respectful, always being respectful, telling the victim's story, and not just telling it as a bullet-pointed thing, but actually bringing you into that person's life and maybe being a little bit creative with some of the details, but just to tell you that person's story. So that was the transition. That was why it sits better with me being like that.
I mean, I think that takes huge courage because, as you mentioned, confidence when you first started was a thing. But look at you, you got episodes out, you did it with your sister, you got to have a chat, but then the courage again to adapt and pivot or change your style to be more narrative led or build a story more or use your voice as a single solo host. You know, that's beautiful. So how did it feel to find the courage to use your voice like that? I mean, even just having the conversation with Nicole must have taken a lot of courage.
It did. It was really nerve-wracking. And it wasn't natural. It didn't come natural. It wasn't something I'd ever done before. And whereas I can have a conversation with Nicole anytime, but actually sitting, pressing record and trying to have that conversation with her, talking about a murder, it just didn't flow. I wasn't confident in that style at all. But I gained a lot more confidence when it was just me. I felt more confident, just me talking. It was strange. I don't know why it didn't sit right, but you've got to find what's right for you.
You do, and I think when you're talking about subject matter like murder or trauma or, really serious violent crimes, there's a duty of care to the victim, but also to the families of that victim.
Exactly.
And something I'm always thinking about is, we love all these true crime shows on Netflix, and some of us binge them, and I've been there too. But actually, where are the victims in that journey, and where are their families, and how often are they re-traumatized in all of those journeys? So yeah, I think it's really important that you are respectful to those that have passed away, in really tragic circumstances. So you have built quite a following, and how does it feel to have people all over the world listening and downloading your material?
It's really strange, but I mean, it's just numbers, isn't it? It wasn't until I went to CrimeCon, the first time I went to CrimeCon, and the people were actually, it was in Glasgow I went to, and people actually knew you. They didn't know me because I never put my face out there, because it was always about the victims. I didn't want to put my face out there. I have now a little bit, because again, it's a confidence thing. But they knew me from the voice. Somebody would say, I know that voice. And I was like, oh my God, my girlfriend listens to you, or we're here to see you, and can I take a photo? And it was awful strange. I was like, it's just me. I don't get that. And it wasn't until then that it actually sinks in, and it's lovely. But it's sharing. It's still what it's all about, is sharing the stories, because otherwise they're forgotten, and they shouldn't be forgotten. But what you mentioned there about but true crime podcasts and shows, how is it re-traumatizing family members? Because, I mean, it's their life. It's not just a story. And it didn't actually hit home. It wasn't something, because I've never been in that situation, it wasn't something I thought about until I did an ethics episode with a community I'm part of. I recorded that. And somebody had a friend that had been murdered, and they explained that it's so upsetting for them when a podcaster or a show puts an episode out there about their friend, and not having ever reached out to the family to ask, just to tell them what they're doing. And that really hit home for me. So it made me rethink again what I was doing, because I'd done some more up-to-date cases, and it just hit home for me. I never want to re-traumatise anybody. So from there, I pivoted again. I started reaching out to family members, and I actually had somebody come on the show who's, to speak about because it's an unsolved case as well. They wanted to get that out there and try and get it solved. So that was me trying to pivot again, because I'm always trying to be respectful any way I can. And now I tend to cover older cases. It just kind of, I don't know, it bothers me a little bit that could be upsetting somebody, and that's never my intention. So I kind of prefer to do older cases where maybe the 18th century and stuff like that. There's still murders, there's still people, but nobody will be alive anymore, pardon, so it's safer.
Yeah.
But it's just been, always want to be respectful. Family members have contacted me. One family member's contacted me and asked me to take an episode down, just because they don't want, it's not personal, they just don't want anybody to talk about their family member, which is, that's their right. So I took that episode down.
I think that's super respectful of you as well. A lot of content creators might not do that, so well done for doing that. I've explored a lot of true crime, and I think there's also something about being women where the fear of violence and threat of violence is so strong. And so you often see a lot of mothers are doing a lot of true crime reading and listening. And I think it's something about re-traumatizing yourself, or about anxiety or something around that. And so I do limit the amount of true crime and stuff that I access now, although I have to confess, and it's fictional, but I am so engrossed in LJ Ross's books at the moment, because she talks about the region and the forensics and the police protocols, and I just love the way she writes. It's so beautiful and picturesque of the area. But I remember a while ago really going through a phase of being hyper focused on the Manson family and the murders and all that kind of thing. And it was actually the thing that changed my mind about victims and the way people are reached out was actually Trent Reznor had been living in the same house that Sharon Tate had been murdered in. And her sister had said, like, publicly, like, please stop glamorizing what happened to my sister. It's really horrific. And that he actually made a public apology. But I thought that was really fascinating, watching that in the kind of celebrity sphere, and also thinking like, wow, imagine what people are going through. And then when the Dharma film came out, or the series on Netflix, that really kind of gave me goosebumps watching how the families might have felt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of times people aren't asked about their journey. So you've mentioned actually someone's actually come on who wanted to raise awareness about the family case. That's pretty powerful. So do you also have, because you have got quite a big following, do you have people requesting you to do particular episodes on, and do they ask for stuff that's not Scottish? So it's Scottish murders, but do they ask you to do like ones outside of the Scottish focus?
No, they don't ever ask for cases outside of Scotland. And actually, I did a little mini series. You know, there was Scottish people that have been murdered outside of Scotland, and I worked with other podcasters in the true crime community, and we covered these cases. You know, murders in America or in Wales or in England, and the amount of comments that I got people saying, have you run out of murders in Scotland? This is Scottish murders. This is not about, you know, Scottish people murdered somewhere else. So I was like, oh, I know, but they're still Scottish. They still were murdered. It still matters. So no, never get requested. And that was a little trial. So I like to pivot, try different things. So I tried that and that didn't work. So it's mainly Scottish crimes Scottish murders I get asked to cover.
Yeah.
And I have a long list to cover.
Of course. But you've always got ideas for material to cover.
Of course.
So would you consider yourself an amateur sleuth?
No.
Mm-mm. So you don't do the sleuthing, you look at facts and evidence and what's been discussed in the criminal justice system or what's available publicly. How do you approach the research?
I use for the older cases, the British Newspaper Archive. That's invaluable because there's a lot that you can't get just by Googling anymore. You've got to actually pay for it. I can't get hold of any from the courts, any material from the courts, because they just won't. They're not very forthcoming with their information, so can't really get anything from there. So it's just research as much as I can. It's everywhere I can, and it's just. You have to stop at some point because you could just keep going and digging and digging. And sometimes I come out with about 30, 40, 50 pages of research that I've then got to condense down to an episode. And I mean, I love it. I absolutely love that side of it. And making it into, bullet points you've come across and making it into a respectful story and telling that person's story.
I think it's fascinating, your research process. So do you use like AI or any tools to speed things up?
No, I don't.
Wow. So taking 50 pages to then make a concise episode that without any AIs for is super awesome. So how long would you say each episode takes you in terms of research and just putting together? Because we know that for anyone who podcasts, it's not just the recording time, it's the editing time, it's the planning time, it's the scheduling to put it out, the raising awareness of it on socials. There's a whole journey, but how much time does it take per episode?
Well, because this Scottish Murders was always a passion project. It was never to make money. It was never going to be consistent, I suppose. I guess I fall down. I do it because it's what I want to do and when I want to do it. So that's a bit of a failing on my side. So because of that, the episodes go out when I can put them out. So sometimes it takes me maybe write for a few hours a day for a week, and sometimes I can't write. You just can't. Sometimes you just can't. It's not flowing. Sometimes it just flows and it's beautiful and it's all my words and it's lovely. But sometimes it just doesn't, and you just have to leave it and come back to it. So it could take a week, it could take a month. It happens when it happens. But I do try and have a backlog, though. But sometimes I catch up with my backlog, and that's when I've got to take a break. And people, you got to.
You do. And also, for people who are thinking of starting a podcast, which I know we can both help lots of people in that way, there is a lot that goes into it that people aren't always aware of, and it's also the time and the energy. And I think when you're doing a topic like murders, it can really get you down and get in your energy. So sometimes you do need a break more than others. There's somebody that I follow, they call those conspiracy guys. They're an Irish group, and they talk all kinds of nonsense about true crime and conspiracy theories. But in recent years, they've done quite a lot of tough episodes, I would say, around child trafficking and similar type themes, and actually it became a bit too much for them, and they've had to take quite a substantial break. And I think that is the thing, is when you're looking at hard evidence or like really sad things, it does really get under your skin. Is there a particular case you've covered where you've found that you keep thinking about it and it's hard to put away?
Yes, it's not a child one. I thought it would have been a child one, but it's which I don't. I try not to do child cases because that's I find that quite tough. But it was actually a miscarriage of justice case. It's always stuck with me. It was only one of the few episodes that made me quite emotional, because he obviously it was somebody convicted of a murder that he didn't do, and the police he was getting put away for that murder, and he fought for many years and many years, and he eventually got released, but he was left with nothing. He was just a mess. He was addicted to drugs. He was just no compensation, nothing. So it took him, and he fought for many years again, and he finally was going to be getting compensation, and he sadly died of a heart attack before he could get it. And he didn't get to his daughter. He had a daughter, never got to meet her. It was just that got to me. That one always has stuck with me, because it could happen to anybody. It's just if your face doesn't fit sometimes, it could happen to you. You could be put away for something because there was no evidence. He didn't do it, but he got put away, and that just scared. I think it scared me that could happen.
Yeah, that absolutely. I think I was thinking the other day, actually, in preparation for this interview, I was thinking about things, and also reading all this L.J. Ross amazing books. I was thinking about, CCTV and the world we live in now, and actually if you did commit a crime, how much evidence would be against someone. But actually also looking through the lens of 100 years ago, 50 years ago, they can solve sometimes cold cases now through DNA and other finds, but it's also that element of, we are so scrutinized and monitored now that there are always trails. Yeah. But at the same time, there are sometimes structural reasons why people fall through the cracks, fall through the net. So that's a really sad one to hear about. And I really feel for his daughter, because that's a rough journey to know that he never met her. And did she know he existed?
No, it wasn't until she actually, I think she got the compensation, and she didn't know it. Her family hadn't told her. She'd been brought up by somebody else, had no idea. And that's just, he missed out on that, and he was just turning his life around. He'd got off drugs, he was healthy, he was doing really well, and he just dropped down.
Wow.
So that one hit me.
Yeah, for sure. That is hard. It's hard to hear that. I mean, I'm curious about your own journey with around this area of interest. So you've talked about using kind of libraries and information that is available. I guess one of the benefits of doing cases that are maybe older is that there's some stuff that's in the public record, is in the public domain, and files have been released and that kind of thing. I was curious, have you ever done your DNA kind of ancestry .com type thing, or do you use that tool for research?
No, I don't use that one for research.
So I did my DNA recently, and I found it fascinating. So I always thought I was an Irish girl. I'm South African Irish by passport, and I'm only 4% Irish in my actual DNA structure. It's like some of it's like Swedish or Scandinavian. There's a tiny bit of South Asian, which I believe is anywhere from India to Mauritius, which makes sense because I grew up in South Africa. So the Mauritius coast is going to be close to South Africa. So it was fascinating looking at all that and kind of figuring out like what makes me me. And one of the things I really liked was seeing the records you can access, and you can actually find quite a lot about like people's, like, if you know somebody's name and surname and when they lived, you can find out like whether they had lodges 100 years ago, or because there's things like census data, so you'll know who was in the home and what their role was in the home, and it's quite fascinating actually, but it takes a lot of time and all of that. And so just doing my family tree has given me a bit of an understanding of the fun of looking through old records, but also how tedious it can be as well.
Oh, no, I don't find it tedious. I love it.
Do you?
I really enjoy it. I go into the British Newspaper Archive and I just, you just open a new tab, and then before I realise I've got like 50 or 60 tabs open, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have to go through all these now. and I love it. I love it. Absolutely. Every little scour, every little inch of the newspaper just for any little tidbits I can find.
But that's powerful, because then when you're building a story, you've got those little tidbits of information. So how do you approach your organizing of all that information? Like, do you just have a notepad and kind of put interesting bits and the link to where you found it, or?
So I do it on Word. It's just, I'm very old school. I do it on Word, and I just take the link where I got it from, and I just copy out everything that's fascinating. Obviously, don't duplicate what I've got already. And then when it comes to writing it, I just take what I need, take bits here, put it into the story, and then bold it out. And then that's when I know, when it's all bold, I know I've got everything. That's it.
It's a great way to do it. I think it's important for, this podcast is for the creatives and the curious, and it's good to know what your process is. So why do you think you're so interested in murder?
I don't think I'm so interested. I don't watch all these true crime stories. I watch some of them, mainly the Scottish one, like the Lockerbie one I watched. I watch these things. I don't watch so much about the American. I prefer fiction, crime fiction. That's what I prefer, really. I love Scottish crime fiction. It's about Scotland. I think that's because it's what's in me. It's places. I could talk about a murder in this place, and it's like, I can picture it in my head because I've been there, or I know that street, or I know that place. So I think it's not so much true crime all over. It's just because it's Scottish.
So it's a connection to home.
It's a connection, yeah.
Reading a lot of L.J. Ross, what I've found actually is I find her books scarier than, say, James Patterson or Patricia Cornwell or any of these kind of fake true crime writers, because of the visceral journey that it takes me on, talking about the quayside markets and the RVI, and so the Royal Victoria Infirmary Hospital, for anyone who doesn't know what that means, or talking about Holy Island, or all these areas where you feel you there, because you've been in that place, and
you can picture it.
So you're saying that actually for you there is that connection as well, of saying, well, if this happened in this alley or this street, because you've been there.
Yeah, not everywhere. I mean, but then what I also found fascinating was when I was researching the murders, it was sometimes being places that I hadn't been and I didn't know. So then I would go off on another little tangent, and I'd think, oh, well, what happens in this place? What do they do in this place? Which was when I started my other podcast.
So tell us about your other podcast.
So it's called Scottish Digest, and it was just a passion thing, because it was places I was researching all the time, and I was finding all these interesting places and what you could do there, and events that they held and what there was to see, and I was thoroughly enjoying it, thinking, I quite fancy visiting there. So I thought, I might just share that as well. So that's kind of the lighter side, the brighter side of Scotland.
So you can almost take people on your own curated dawn journey, where you're like, okay, so tell us a bit about that one. You might kind of build a scene about what's in that area or that place. Yeah.
Yeah, it started off. I did it. The first season was just. I would just tell you. It's not a script. It's scripted, but it's not like Scottish Murders. It's just telling you what you can do there, things you can see. But then I got people that were holding events there, the organisers, just to do a little recording for me, and I would put that in so you could find out a bit from them. But then the next season, I actually spoke to people, brought them onto the podcast and got them to tell me about their journeys or their trips to these places and what they saw. And so it was really interesting because I haven't been to a lot of these places. So I was like, God, it opened up Scotland for me as well.
So all I'm hearing here is it's all a love letter to the Scottish, to Scotland, isn't it? It's kind of a legacy and it's like a kind of public memorial of Scotland.
I miss Scotland, Ashleigh. I miss Scotland.
Do you go home to visit much? And where would you call home in Scotland?
So Scotland, it's Oban and Skye, because that's the places I've had houses in and been the most. These are my two places. Don't get there anymore. My gran had my house in Skye. She lived in that, and she now lives down in Gateshead with me because she's not well anymore. There's no reason to go back anymore now.
Yeah.
So I enjoy going to CrimeCon in Glasgow, but they're not doing it this year, so that was my reason.
So why aren't they doing it?
They're going to go to Manchester instead, and they're going to see if people from Glasgow will come to Manchester, and if they do.
So it started out
Spoiler alert, yeah, I'm told it.
So it started out in Glasgow, but now it might... I mean, it's good to try different things. As you've said yourself, pivoting is important, but it's really nice to see, I think, how communities can meet in different places around a topic. So speaking of communities, you've set up an amazing new podcast agency in the northeast of England. Well, it's actually in Gateshead, but serving the northeast of England and global audience. And it's about, launching a podcast, planning a podcast, growing a podcast. And that's called Cluarantonn, which is a really unique name.
It's Cluarantonn. And I know...
apologies,
No,
sorry.
don't apologise. This is the thing. That's what's unique about it. You can't spell it and you can't pronounce it.
I cannot say it. So say it again for me.
It's Cluarantonn.
Cluarantonn.
Yeah.
Okay, and you tell us more about your choice of name.
I've had so many people, brands and business managers and every brand experts tell me, change the name, Dawn. And I won't, because it means something to me, and that's what seems to be my the theme running through here. It's what means something to me. It's Gaelic. It's 2 words I picked from Gaelic, and it means thistle wave. So I couldn't have thistle wave because that had already been taken, so I called it Cluarantonn instead. So, and it's again, it's something Scottish, so it means something to me. So I'm not changing it. Don't care, nobody can say it or pronounce it or spell it.
But there's something really fun about that choice, because, I mean, look back 20 years ago, we didn't have Google or Uber or Apple, we did have Apple, but, there are names that are household names now that you maybe would think back and go, Google? Really? What a strange, is that even a word? PayPal. So some of the things that we think are strange can turn out. Netflix, these incredible brands that have popped up. So I think it's a unique name. Sometimes I get stuck on how to spell it and I'm trying to Google it and then I get it right eventually. But it means, well, the way you see it is the bridge to podcasting, right?
Yeah.
Which is really important. So you'll get this question all the time, but is it too late to start a podcast? I know I get this question too, but their appetite for podcasts, people are listening and consuming them. Someone was telling me the other day that they actually watch stuff on their big screen on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're someone who listens to podcasts, there's an amazing opportunity to really serve that audience. And it's the fact that people can really build communities out of really unique situations. So you've said there, you're passionate about Scotland, you're passionate about traveling and experiencing and sharing those experiences. So you've got that, but then you've also got that sense of justice and research and opportunity to talk about murders as well. I'm so glad that you have started Cluarantonn. But I think this is where, we're really lucky, actually, as podcasters, we can build a community. I mean, I don't know about you, but how do you find looking at analytics? Because sometimes I look at stuff and I'm thinking, who are these people listening? Do you ever think that? What's your strangest country? Because I remember getting people in Helsinki and being like, Helsinki? Really? Like, why? Like, why are they interested? So are you finding, like, is there anywhere that you've looked at your analytics and thought, wow?
I can't remember the name of the place, which is really annoying. It was a while ago now, because I don't tend to look at analytics, not certainly the chart side of it too much now. But at the beginning, it was like every day, every few hours. And there was one place, it was completely obscure, a small place, I can't remember, abroad. And we went to number 1.
Really?
Yes. Wow. And I'm like, let me look at these charts. How? And I mean, it was, like I say, it was a very small place. So, I mean, you probably could listen to maybe a couple of episodes and you get to number 1. But it was number 1. And I was like, who is listening? And where is this place? But it was actually really cool.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I don't think I've ever been number 1 in any kind of podcasting chart. But I think, so I don't really look at the chart so much. It's more, I'm interested in the demographics, interested in where people are in the world. And I find it fascinating if you look at stats of where people are listening. There are so many listeners in Korea, for instance. The podcast communities listening are just growing and growing and growing. Through starting a podcast studio myself and learning about podcasting and training about podcasting, one of the things that I've found really interesting has been trying to figure out what the kind of political and economic and social, technological, legal and environmental landscape is around podcasting. So PESTEL, if you've ever heard that phrase, it's a strategic term in strategic planning. So it's looking at the macro factors of things. So PESTEL is the model that you use. And so I've done quite a lot of research in this, and this is quite niche, but that's because I'm interested in podcasting and I do it as a job. But one of the things that really, really interested me is if you look at podcasts as a political tool or from that viewpoint, freedom of speech comes up a lot. So if you look at, say, certain parts of the world where there is a lot of restrictions around freedom of speech, if you're able to access a podcast through Vimeo or other tools, or if you're able to share something, you can actually learn about the world in a way that maybe other content is restricted. So I thought that was really interesting.
Interesting, actually.
I've also looked at the fact that you can also, because you can build communities, you can have such a right-wing perspective or a left-wing perspective. People can become quite polarized and build communities because they're only seeing the things they're searching for. So I think we have amazing opportunities with podcasting, but also some scary ones if you had maybe nefarious intentions or weren't aware of the responsibility of building a platform. So I do think it's a really interesting one. But I also think, how cool is it that we get to chat? Like, yes, that's what we do.
It is.
And is this what you do full time? So you are full-time podcaster of 2 podcasts and you help people podcast.
Yes.
And so exactly like me, you get paid to chat.
Yeah. It's
what
great.
A job.
No,
have you always been a chatterbox?
No, see, I've always been really shy. I think it's since I hit 40. I think you start to you don't care I don't care, you know what I mean? You don't care what people think as much anymore. So my confidence is growing and growing and growing, and it's just like, I'll just do me now. So no, I haven't. I've always been quite a quiet person.
But it sounds to me like your podcasting has never been about you. It's been about the victims and about seeking justice or seeking an opportunity to share those stories. And then on the other hand, with the other podcast where you're talking about places that you've researched and been or want to share with people, it's almost like sharing a gift.
Yeah.
You know, so you're taking people on a journey with you. And I'm curious, with that second podcast, do you get messages from people saying, hey, I loved your episode about this and I've been here now and I did this?
No.
Would you like to get those
yes,
kind of messages?
I do. I put a poll in on Spotify. You can put a poll, and I always say, let me know if you've been here. Let me know what you've thought. Have you been to these events? But no, nobody replies. So I haven't built the community on that side. But I think it's because it's very sporadic. That again was just a passion for me. It was just putting it out when I could. And I haven't built the community side of that as much as I have Scottish Murders. So I'm not a great multitasker, I'm ashamed to say. So I think I focus on certain things and I maybe lack focus on Scottish Digest. Scottish Digest is just a fun one.
I disagree. I think you're a fantastic multitasker because you're running 2 podcasts and a business, and it's a startup, and it's incredible, and it's growing, and it's really helping people. So I'm proud to say that I've been one of your speakers, and I've been one of your attendees, and it's been a really beautiful community that you're building. Nice. So I spoke at one of your events last year, and there was this great guy in the audience, Rob, who I knew, Robert Lill. And we'd already met and we talked about podcasting before, but it blew my mind. Like, he said that night, I want to start a podcast. It needs to be launched next week. And I think everyone who runs a studio who was there that night was like, that's never going to happen. That's like some serious level energy. Yeah. Anyway, next thing you know, he's at my business the next day talking about his podcast. And then he launched and he, like, his latest episode, I think he's on 6 released now or 4 released, it had like something like 1,600 views.
That's amazing.
In 5 hours.
That's fantastic.
But I don't understand. He is. But there must be something about, like, I'm always trying to work out like what works, what doesn't, what attracts listeners. And I don't know if it's just that energy, just that I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it happen. But like, isn't that incredible? Like, I could dream of views or like engagement like that. Like, what is it? So
that's fantastic.
But what I wanted to say there is, like, that community is helping people to meet connections, to exchange numbers, to work together in other ways, to refer work to each other. Yeah. It's really special. Are you proud of what you're building?
I am. I am proud of it. It's almost what I wanted to do. People on my journey, I didn't know anything. I came from nothing. And people were so generous with their time and their skills to help me grow and be, you know, I've got quite a lot of knowledge now about podcasting, and I really appreciate that. So it was just to give back, and for people like me who want to start a podcast and think, oh, it'll be dead easy, and then find out it's not, and there's a minefield of information out there, to be that person that wasn't there for me. So kind of twofold. That's why. So yeah, I am proud, and I want to be that person. I want to share with everybody and connect people.
It's wonderful. What would you say is the thing that shocked you most in your journey starting out?
Oh God, the amount of information that's out there. I had no idea. Honestly, I thought, I can do that. And then you just type in and it's just, and everybody wants to sell you something. That was what was probably shocking for me. You know, I want to go do this boot camp, sell me this, I want, you know, sell you that. And I just think, please just tell me, somebody just tell me what's right for me. What do I need for me? And it took a long time, but I got there through all these experts. And now I want to pay it back, kind of thing, and share and connect people.
Absolutely. It's creating opportunities for others, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that just blew me away was you don't have to be in a professional studio. So I started out in a professional studio doing audio only. And then during COVID, I had the opportunity to teach myself at home and live stream. And I have to say that's a very different experience when you're live streaming, because people can tune in and leave comments live. But what I find is that, so I did quite a lot of episodes around race, and it was during a lot of the George Floyd aftermath and a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement going on in the States. And actually some of the comments were really controversial and trying to address the needs of your guest, but also your community and people watching. It just felt quite hard at times live streaming, because you have to really be on it, and you can't make errors. And at least when you're pre-recording, you've got the opportunity to edit things out if they're controversial or contentious. But yeah, that taught me that you don't have to be in a professional studio, and I learned so many skills. And so now I definitely advocate working with studios, because I run one, but my stuff is now, you know, professionally produced by my team, but I also can help people to do it for themselves. And I think a lot of people think you have to have this glamorous kind of setting, but really you can do it at home with a really simple mic. Yeah. What would you say then for anyone wanting to start a podcast? What would your top tip be?
Don't do it on your own. Don't do it on your own unless you've got the skills. It's not easy. It takes time. You need to have a strategy of how you're going to get it out there to share it. And there's a lot you need to know before you start. It's not just pick up the mic and away you go. don't just do that.
So I have a question then about something called pod fade. Pod fade is a term that people use when they run out of episodes, or not even running out of episodes, they run out of interest in that topic. So I think that's super important that nobody talks about. You know, what do you love talking about so much that you're never going to get bored? And I really feel that for anyone starting out, actually looking into what they love, but also having a strategy about what they want to talk about is so important. Yeah.
Yes.
So
pod feeds, it's a big thing because the stats, I think I don't know the exact figures, I can find out, but I think looking at on Apple just alone, there must be about 4 million podcasts out there, but only 400 or so are actually active, or actually have had an episode in the last 90 days, and it's just because, you don't have a strategy at the beginning, you haven't got a backlog of episodes, and you just get worn out because you're doing it sort of as an independent, indie podcast. You're doing it as well as your life, your job. So that's why a lot of people fade. It's just too much. It's not easy.
Exactly. I do think there's something to be said for having time-limited series. So what I mean by that is if someone wanted to do maybe 3 episodes or 6 episodes about a particular topic, I think that can be really valuable. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's important to choose your topic. I always say to people to try and choose pillars. So we always say with Nurture Your Zest, it's for the creative and the curious. So we talk to people in the creative industries. That could be stilt walkers, artists, it could be podcasters, it could be hula hoopers, circus folks, anything to do with creativity. But then on the other hand, we do a lot of stuff around the tech sector. So we talk about gadgets, innovations, because I love the latest new gadget. Yeah, absolutely. But then I also love to talk about societal issues. So we talk a lot about courageous things, So I have 5 pillars. So it's curiosity, creativity, courage, inspiration, and zest.
Okay.
And for me, if something doesn't fit in those pillars, I'm not going to do it. And that also means that I say no all the time to people, because I think something else that people should be aware of is when you do start a podcast, your time for every single episode has to matter. So not everything's going to align. And if you have pillars, it helps you make decisions a lot faster. So do you have anything like that helps you kind of think, well, I'm not going to do this case, or I'm going to approach it in this way? Do you have like anything to help you make your decisions?
I really wanted it to be about something to do with Scotland. I had a author come on, and it was because I like crime fiction, but it's a true crime podcast. But they had a new book coming out, and their agent got in touch with me to ask if he could come on. And I thought about it for a wee while. I was like, you are Scottish, but you're not the right. But I actually went ahead with it, and it turns out it was really good. And he found a lot of my listeners were like me, and they like crime fiction as well. So he found a lot of listeners, but I was very, very strict about not having, if you weren't Scottish, if you didn't have it wasn't a Scottish topic, you couldn't come on. And a lot of people have actually asked in the past to come on, and I said no. I did go back and I reassessed it, and I did let them come on, but that sounds really bad, like I'm gatekeeping. But for me, it had to be that, but then I kind of relented a little bit.
So it's interesting the way you've talked about that as gatekeeping, because I've never really thought about it in that way, but I actually think we do need to gatekeep sometimes. So I always like to elevate people's stories, which is why I might interview somebody who has a great profile and connections, or they've got really great insights and industry experience, but then I might also interview someone who would never have the opportunity to go on a podcast normally. However, I do think we need to gatekeep, because if you are taking the time to put that episode out, to do the research, to prepare the information for the guest, to do the recording, to edit it, whether you're doing that yourself or you're outsourcing it, the cost to that and your time, you're giving someone the opportunity. So actually, I think we should gatekeep, because in a sense that gives a better quality show. If you just do anyone and everyone, it's not going to necessarily be focused. And like, there will be people who are listening to this episode or watching it who aren't going to align with my pillars or values, and they might not like me as a host, but that's okay, because what they think of me is none of my business, because it's about the material and it's about who I'm talking to. So I think there is an argument for gatekeeping, but at the same time, it's an interesting one when you want to open up spaces. And I think a lot of people don't realize that for many podcasters, myself included, this is a passion project. You know, funding a podcast takes effort. And having a budget around that as well. So, I think that's really insightful information about your journey. One of the things I'd love to ask, and I'm actually in awe of this myself, is what do you think has helped you to build your community, to build a following? What would you say to anyone wanting to kind of grow their show?
Go on a lot of other podcasts in your niche, and you should get more listeners from that podcast as well. But the most important thing is to engage. You have to engage with them. Make them feel they're along for the ride with you. Include them in an episode. Give them shout outs. Ask them what parts of the show that they like. Ask them to shape the show. Let them be included. And I think that builds a really strong community. And you don't need a huge big community. You just need your core. Your core ones are going to be your diehards that are there to support you, and just make them feel special, because they're important.
I love that. All beautiful insights. So I've got one more question.
Okay.
So I ask everyone this.
Oh no.
What is your number one word to nurture your zest?
God, why didn't I do that?
So it can be whatever you want, but the way we describe it is it's the thing that gets you up and out of bed in the morning, maybe when the skies are dark and you're feeling gloomy. What's that thing that gets that spring in your step and helps you to motivate yourself?
Collaboration. Collaboration's my one word. I love working with people. I love sharing things. That's what gets me up in the morning.
And that's beautiful, because that shows in the community you're building, and I'm really excited to be a member of that and watch that grow. So thank you so much for your time, Dawn.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for listening to Nurture Your Zest today. If you're feeling extra kind, it would mean so much to me if you could share this episode with your friends or family, or anyone who you think might feel inspired by this content. Liking, sharing, or interacting with our content is a great way to support us as content creators, and it helps us to bring interesting stories and more people to you. This podcast is a Flamingo Heights podcast studio production, and I've been your host, Ashleigh King. If you liked today's episode, follow the video on your screen now, or check out the link in your show notes to find similar content.